Members, we now move to part 4, and this is debate on clauses 69 to 75, and the question is at part 4, stand part.
Mr. Chair.
I call Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I stand to talk to part 4. This is largely technical in nature. It's the amendments to the Tax Administration Act 1994. Whenever we have a tax bill through the Select Committee that passes through the House, there are always amendments to the Tax Administration Act because, as the title suggests, it is the Act that governs the administration of the tax system. So it just makes sense that when the tax system changes, and so does the administration of that system. There was not that much that was contentious under this. I suppose one that there were a number of submissions was clause 71, and this is offshore persons' bank accounts and tax file numbers. Now, there were a number of submissions, including the Chartered Accountants, Australia, New Zealand Racing Board, PwC, and PwC. Well, good point. Wonder why they submitted. Better take a deeper look at that one. The other one also is that, in a similar vein, in clause 71, the requirement for an offshore person to have a New Zealand bank account number in order to apply for an IRD number. And again, submissions from Chartered Accountants New Zealand and Australia, New Zealand, Corporate Taxpayer Group, KPMG and Oliver Shaw Limited. You know, I must admit, and I don't mean to curry favour with anyone, whenever I see a submission from Oliver Shaw, it tends to be the first one that I read because those two gentlemen who are the partners in Oliver Shaw know a little bit about the tax system. I think Rob and Oliver is there such a thing as a master taxation expert? If there is, then Robin is one of these people. He's a rare individual that takes absolute joy in pouring through tax bills in minute detail and finding the sort of errors and where things can be changed. And all power to him. Without someone like Robin, then I think a lot of things that aren't that pragmatic would disappear. But he's very much a pragmatist as well, and he understands the role of tax legislation. So what this is about is from October the 1st, 2015, this is when the Bright Line test came in, a person who is an offshore person or an offshore RW, resident withholding tax person, must have a functioning New Zealand bank account to apply for an IRD number. The requirement to have a New Zealand bank account, this is part of our anti-money laundering identification verification requirements that only do apply to offshore persons, and it was introduced in Budget 2015 in a suite of changes to tighten up our anti-money laundering rules. Unfortunately, in that budget, it didn't have anything about offshore trusts and anything like that. I suspect we know the reason why, but that's beside the point. So basically...
Why is that, Stuart?
Well, because it was unknown, Minister. And the interesting thing, now that the Minister has asked that question, I feel bound to respond, because the Minister actually said in the media that New Zealand does not have a problem with multinational companies not paying tax. And the interesting thing about that is the Obama administration, the Cameron government, nearly every single OECD country has identified the fact there actually is a problem. It's a solution they're grappling with. So we know the problem, but apparently our Revenue Minister believes that we are the only country in the OECD without a problem. Oh, maybe that's what it is, Mr. Clark. But we do have a problem, and unfortunately what has been shown in recent days that our tax system has come under increasing pressure.
Come back to the bill.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just responding to the Minister and the Chair.
I asked a question.
No.
Oh, okay.
Back to the bill.
Yeah, sure. So what I was saying is this comes into... Any more comments, Minister, you'd like me to answer? No. That an offshore person... This is basically for anti-money laundering rules, which are incredibly important for the integrity of our tax system. So we talked about an individual will be an offshore person for the purposes of a bank account requirement if they are not a New Zealand citizen and they do not have a resident class visa. We talked quite a bit about this because there are certain residents like RSE workers who come into the country. They're here for about 3 months. They earn very little in the scheme of things, to be honest, and we asked, do they need to have a bank account? And I think in the end we required that they didn't have to have a bank account. They do. Of course they do. Oh, well, we talked long and hard about this, and there was some very good discussion between the expert advisor. But anyway, a New Zealand citizen will be an offshore person. We've discussed this if they're not present in New Zealand, not visited in the past 3 years. But as has been outlined in another part of the bill, All a New Zealand resident has to do is enter the country on holiday, show their passport, and out they go again, and that'll scrub. Very easy to sort of get around this if you're a New Zealand passport holder. Mr. Chair, okay, I'll sit down.
I'm going to give Dr. David Clark